Welcome back, everyone, and let's explore the scapula. So scapula is one of the bones in the shoulder region, and together with the clavicle, they will form the pectoral girdle, and the pectoral girdle, it attaches the upper limb to the axial skeleton. So scapula is a large triangular bone. It's one example of flat bone, and it lies dorsally, and it extends from second up to seventh rib. So it forms a physiological scapulothoracic joint with the ribs. But as you see it here, laterally, it articulates with clavicle, and here inferolaterally, it articulates with humerus. So scapula, since it's triangular, it has 3 borders and 3 angles. So the borders are superior border, medial or vertebral border. So the medial border lies adjacent to the spines of vertebrae. So it's known as vertebral border. And it has lateral or axillary border. So the lateral border is the thickest border, and it lies adjacent to the axilla. So it's known as axillary border. And it has 3 angles. It has superior angle between superior and medial border. It has inferior angle between medial and lateral border. And it has lateral angle between superior and lateral border. And on its superior border, there is a notch, which is known as suprascapular notch. There is a small depression, which is known as suprascapular notch. In life, traversing this notch, or on the top of this notch, there is a ligament, which is known as transverse scapular ligament. And this ligament changes this notch into a foramen. So here there is a ligament. So the ligament converts this notch into a foramen. So the suprascapular nerve runs through this foramen. So the superior border is the thinnest border, and it contains this small depression, which is the suprascapular notch. And scapula has 2 surfaces. So it has anterior and posterior surface. So the anterior surface is known as costal surface. It's adjacent to the ribs, and it forms the physiological scapulothoracic joint. So since it's adjacent to the ribs, known as costal surface. But the posterior surface is known as dorsal surface. And scapula has 3 processes. So on the dorsal surface, crossing the dorsal surface, it has a spine. So one of the processes is the spine. In the spine, it continues laterally, and it becomes flat. And this flat part is known as acromion process. So the second process is acromion process. And acromion process, it forms the apex of our shoulder. And the third process is coracoid process. As you see, the coracoid process, it looks like a bent finger, and it points towards the shoulder joint. So scapula has these 3 processes: spine, acromion process, and coracoid process. And when we see the spine has a prominence. As you see it here, it has a prominence. And this prominence is known as deltoid tubercle. And it's the medial insertion part of the deltoid muscle. So we have a strong abductor muscle, deltoid muscle, here in our shoulder. And this is the medial insertion site of deltoid, origin site of deltoid. And scapula has 3 depressions or fossae. So it has, on its costal surface, it has subscapular fossa. It's a large, shallow depression. And on its dorsal surface, it has 2 depressions. One is above the spine, and it's known as supraspinous fossa. The other one is below the spine, and it's known as infraspinous fossa. So they are named based on their location. Above the spine, supraspinous. Below the spine, it's infraspinous fossa. And on its costal surface, this large, shallow depression is subscapular fossa. And these fosses are attachment site for muscles. 3 of the rotator cuff muscles are attached to these sites, or they originate from these depressions. And on its supralateral part, or when we see the lateral surface of the scapula, there is a shallow depression, which is known as glenoid cavity. So this glenoid cavity, it articulates with the head of humerus, and it forms the glenohumeral or shoulder joint. And above and below the glenoid cavity, there are 2 small bony projections, which are known as supra and infraglenoid tubercles. So here, above the glenoid cavity, we have supraglenoid tubercle, and below we have infraglenoid tubercle. So these are attachment sites for muscles. Supraglenoid is attachment site for biceps brachii muscle. So the long head of biceps brachii, it originates from supraglenoid tubercle. And infraglenoid is attachment site for triceps muscle. The long head of triceps originates from the infraglenoid tubercle. So on the lateral surface, we have a glenoid cavity, and we have supra and infraglenoid tubercles. And generally, we can divide the scapula into 3 parts. So it has head. The head is the part that contains the glenoid cavity. So this is the head that contains the glenoid cavity. Just immediately next to the head, there is a constriction, which is the neck. The remaining major part of the scapula, it forms the body. So scapula has 3 parts: head, which contains the glenoid cavity. Below the head, the constriction or the narrow part is the neck, and the remaining major part is the body. So to summarize, scapula has 2 surfaces, costal and dorsal surface. They are the anterior and posterior surfaces. And it has 3 borders: superior border, medial and lateral border. It has 3 angles: superior angle, inferior angle, and here we'll have lateral angle. And it has 3 processes: the spine, the acromion process, and the coracoid process. And on the spine, this prominence is the deltoid tubercle, origin site for deltoid. And scapula has 3 fosses: subscapular fossa on the costal surface, supra and infraspinous fossa on the dorsal surface. And on the supralateral aspect of the scapula, there is a shallow depression, which is known as glenoid cavity. And the glenoid cavity articulates with humerus, and it forms the shoulder joint. So most of the things are 3. So it's a rule of 3. 3 borders, 3 angles, 3 depressions, 3 processes. So that's all about scapula. See you in the next video.